welcome them also. So, beginning with item number 1, call to order. The first item is Pledge of Allegiance. If you would rise. Thank you. Close out 1 and go to number 2, which is setting of the agenda.
There are no changes, Mayor.
No changes.
Sir.
I make a motion, we approve the agenda as written.
Motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Close out 2. Number 3 is consent agenda. All items listed below are considered routine or have been discussed at length in previous meetings will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion will be held except on request by a member of the Board of Commissioners. And that is A. Consider approval of minutes of regular board meeting of January 27, 2025, and work session on February 10, 2025.
I make a motion, we accept the consent agenda.
I second.
Motion and a second. Discussion from the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Close out number 3, go to number 4, which is informal discussion and public comment. And that is a chance for someone that would like to come up to the microphone and speak. I do have someone that has asked to speak, which is Mr. Palmer.
Yeah, Mayor, just so the public's clear, this is for anything that's not on the agenda.
That's right,
elsewhere.
yeah.
Any of the plain zoning matters, you could speak if you signed up at that time.
Yeah, this is just public speaking. Yes, sir.
Mayor, board members, how you doing? I'm Jerry Palmer. I'm the commander of the American Legion Post 72 here in Aberdeen. And I
You'd like to get closer to the microphone. We can, thank you.
Jerry Palmer, American Legion Post Commander here for Post 72 in Aberdeen. And I came to a board meeting last month and presented the proposal for Hometown Heroes. And what I've done is I asked for some samples to be sent so I could come and share those with you tonight. So I want to show them to you. So this is what they look. This is what they look like.
World War II,
And that's
how about that?
one that is whatever they have.
Sure,
Yes.
sure.
This is the one I proposed, and also I've taken a look at the light post that you have, and you already have brackets up there, and I believe that these would fit right on the same brackets you already have. They're 18 inches by 36 inches. You might have to lower the rack a little bit to accommodate, but it looks like that they're just put on there, just kind of strapped on, and they can move up and down pretty easily. So what I believe is that means that we wouldn't have to buy brackets, which is a considerable savings to the original proposal. So this is just for sake of show and tell. Here's the bigger ones.
Yeah,
So those are much larger.
yeah.
They're more visible.
That would pick up a lot of the
Yes.
space on the pole
A
too.
lot of space in the pole.
Yeah, the other one looks more appropriate, I think.
So, yeah, I was going with the small one after I got the samples, but I just wanted you to see the size difference.
Sure.
Did we
Sure.
discuss possibly making them the same size as the banners that we have now? Because then that would keep you from having to move the brackets up and down, wouldn't it?
I don't know what the sizes are. Who
I think they
knows?
just come in those two sizes. Is that right, Mr. Palmer?
Yeah, it's 2 standard sizes.
2 standard sizes?
Yeah.
Right, and we use 2 different sizes, and there are 2 different types of brackets depending on the
Okay.
size, but I don't have those numbers off the cuff. for
Right,
you.
okay.
Likely the same, but I don't know for certain.
Could you come down and meet with the planners, just to find out?
Like to have this one to check it out?
Yeah, if you could leave the
Yeah.
small one,
Yeah, do
that'd be
that.
great, that we could size
That
it,
we
see
can
see how it fits.
Right, we won't want Public Works to have to
No.
move brackets in addition to put banners up, take them down, yeah.
So if we don't have to buy the brackets, that would have been $347.50 that we would save. So that means that for 5 banners at $84.95 means that's $424.75 plus a processing fee of $100. So we're looking at, we can get 5 banners up for around $524.75. So it's pretty reasonable, I think.
Yeah, Mayor, if we could borrow that banner, we could get, Public Works to try it, just see what fits, and if there's, say, 5 locations that's already there, or what the change would be. And then, we can let our downtown planner kind of, maybe come back with a proposal, at the work session about, like you said, sponsorships before, or what minimal funding there might be, and just kind of lay out the board what the options are. And
Sure.
if we put one up for 5 minutes, maybe we can get a picture of it and bring it back to you so you can kind of see what it looks like.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Yep, well, you've done a lot of homework. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I hope we can do it.
Yeah, I hope we can make this
And
work.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
yeah, leave it with, leave that one banner with leave it with the clerk over here,
So who
That-
wants it?
the clerk right there, let her have it, or somebody over there can take it. And they'll do the look and to see what the dimensions are, they'll get back to you.
Okay, and you have my contact information?
Yes,
so
sir.
Just let me know, and I'm ready to get started when you guys are.
Well, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Looks good, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Informal discussion and public comment? Who wants to talk about Aberdeen? Or what's going on? No one? Okay, no one wants to do public comment. I'll close it out. Go to number 5, which is manager's report.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You've got the, the written report on your desk. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll just highlight a few quick things. I think most of what you've heard. Again, the library is moving along quickly. I know the Mayor Pro Tem and the Fire Chief just made another quick visit to check the doors about 15 minutes ago, and they were both somewhat shocked at how much drywall had gone up in the last couple of days, so it's moving along fast. And the Fire Chief assures me that everything that's behind the drywalls is behind the drywalls, so we're hoping that we're in good shape there. So it's moving along well. So that's that project is really moving fairly smoothly. I think we're trying to shore up some of the upstairs attic area. Still working on that a little bit, but I don't think that's going to be as big as an issue as it might have been. We think we found a way to kind of make it work and secure the kind of the roof, under the roof, and that walk-around attic area. Again, just wanted to say thanks to the many of the Public Works crew for getting us through that cold spell last week. I know it was kind of a little bit, well, you just never know with North Carolina weather, but maybe a little bit over predicted. But I know some places not too far north and east of here got several inches of snow. We just got a little bit of an ice sprinkling, but some of the roads were dangerous, even northern in the county. They were pretty slippery in spots. But the road crews got out the brine on the roads, and also the sanitation crew was able to not miss a pickup day. They had to back up the trucks one day because the landfill was closed on one of the days. But Joe and his crew were able to work around that and keep the trash picked up on schedule. So just want to say I appreciate all their extra work on that. Town Hall did close early on Wednesday and open late on Thursday, but really just 2 4-hour spells there. But we're open at least partially both Wednesday and Thursday on those days. So got through it without too much inconvenience to anyone on the public side, hopefully. Also, I mentioned my weekly report last week that the letter that the board had voted on that I sent to DOT regarding the landscaping and tree replacement along the US 1 project and others, Highway 5, 211, pick your favorite
Pick your
tree
road.
decimation
Yeah.
area in town or on the edge of town. And actually, DOT responded pretty quickly with, just the general indication that, hey, we do have, a landscape, not full, of course, but, a replanting plan along with the funding for these projects. I'm sure it won't be clearly what it was, because it's all going to be, newly planted trees and bushes or shrubs. And of course, that won't be until the end of those projects, once they're done. So we have a little bit of time, but the DOT was more than willing to meet with us to kind of say, hey, here's what we've got. Maybe be thinking about it. We meet here in the next few weeks or next few months. And then we can, as we get closer to the end of those dates, which is literally, year, 2 years away, depending on which project we're talking about, we can kind of tidy that up a little bit more with more specificity. So we feel like there will be some attempt and hopefully some success in trying to revegetate, some of those areas that were hit pretty hard with the improvements, clearing the way for the new DOT roads. Of course, they're not our roads at all.
So they haven't yet given you a date to meet?
No, I think they'll let us set that up. But again, I can meet depending on which board members want to be there, just let me know, and I can set it up and try and get the whole group there. And if there's more than, if there's more than 2 of you, we can just set it as a meeting and just have a
Yeah.
discussion about it. So either way is fine, and DOT seemed pretty, willing to meet, at our convenience.
Right. I think it's important to early have them commit to something in writing, because before, when we'd asked, it was just, yeah, there's gonna be landscaping, but nothing, and once it's over with, they can come back and say, that's not what we promised you. So, yeah, I think it's a great idea to meet with them this early. Don't you, Mayor?
Yes, yes.
And finally, Mayor, I thought I mentioned that we did get the reimbursement check in the amount of $400,000 from, again, NCDOT for the improvements in front of the Sportsplex. So, and Butch will give reports on, not so much tonight, though he may hit on it a little bit, on the fact that the Sportsplex fund is now, 100% plus some funded. There's a little bit of additional funds in there that are still in part of the project ordinance, and that's separate from just our annual budget for maintenance at the Sportsplex that we're hoping to use for some tree plantings and some shrubs, on that entryway as you go into the Sportsplex, to dress it up a bit so it looks a little bit more vegetated. And I think it'll be a good entryway into that park, and it'll have nothing but time to grow and have a really nice, I think, call it what you want, whether it's a tree canopy or a shrub canopy, as you make your way to the main part of the park. So that'll be a good project. I know in the past we've got with Mike, and he's given us a few good ideas on which trees and shrubs will work better than others. So we'll definitely keep him involved in that process. And Mayor, if there's any questions, that's all I have for my report.
I went into the new building where we're putting the library in around lunchtime today, and the only drywall that was up was the bathroom. Now, how much has it been done since then? 65% of it finished. And that was from about noon. So they have put up a lot of drywall since noon.
About 4:45, and it looked really finished.
Yeah, all they had done at noon was the bathroom.
It really looks good, looks like a building.
Yeah, so it changes it when you can see the actual walls when you go
Yes,
in.
yes, it does.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, on the Sportsplex, have we considered advertisements for the fences or anything like that?
Yeah, there is approval to do that. It's just, and basically the tenants up there, ACS, who are renting it, basically have presented to them, how they could make money, funding, that kind of thing within the shared effort. So I don't think they have the manpower to really go out and do sales, but, I mentioned it to one of banks, or Butch's banks that he's dealing with, that they've expressed an interest here and there to see if they want to invest in advertising. But good time to talk about tonight. We do have good packages for like an 8-foot section for a banner that goes up, and for those businesses who want to spend a few $100 to put that up, for a year, it's a good investment because that park is well attended week in and week out. So
the Moore County Republican Men's Club would be interested.
Okay. Be happy to send them a bill.
Send me a bill.
Anyone else with the manager's report? Anyone? All right, if not, I'm close out 5 and go to number 6, monthly financial report. Mr. Watson.
Good evening, board, mayor and board. I'll try to be as efficient as possible because we'll have a long agenda tonight. I put something in front of you tonight so you could follow along, set on the screen. Make it a lot easier if you'd like. I'm gonna talk about our financial position through the end of January, then I'll have some tidbits I'll add that's not on your report through today as well. So if you take a look at the general fund, through the end of January, we had received $10,931,000, expended $8,211,000, so we had net income of $2,719,000. Some highlights of the revenues of those through the end of January. Through the end of January, for the real and personal property tax collection by the county, proceeded for the town of Aberdeen's behalf, we received $6,184,000. That's 95.25% of budget. As of today, we are 100.72% of budget collected, or $6,539,000. That's through this afternoon about 4:15 for that perspective. For motor vehicle tax revenues, we had collected 58.11%, or $231,819. That's through, we get that every month, and then we'll probably get that probably in the next couple of days again. Through today, we're at 69.13%, or $275,790 collected. The fire and real personal property tax collections through the end of January was 78.45% of budget, or $278,485. We receive that every other month from the county, so there's no change for this month. Garbage fees revenue collected through the end of January was 67.44% of budget. That's $314,009. Through today, it's 77.23%, or $588,657. Building permit revenues collected was 103.16% of collections at the end of January, of $335,283. As of today, it's 110.57%, or $359,361. ABC net revenues, we receive that quarterly, so that's no change, but at the present time, it's 82.58% of budget, $156,485. Sales tax revenues through the end of January, which at the time was only 5 months, the way it's collected and distributed by the state, with 43.83% of budget, and collections were $1,610,978. As of today, we had received another payment this past week. 52.79% of collections were $1,940,163. And for utility franchise tax, we're at 56.53% of budget, or $319,061. No change there for this month. We'll get another payment in a month or so. And then power bill revenues, we received all of that for the year. We received that again in September and early January, with 126.89% of budget, or $362,892. And again, there'll be no change with that through the end of the year. So overall, it's probably one of the highest months we'll see all year, because that's usually the highest month for the whole year, since we get the most of collections in December and January from the county for property taxes. So again, our net income for the general fund at the present time is $2,719,916. Any questions on the general fund? On the water and sewer fund, our revenues through the end of January were $3,118,681. Expenditures were $2,526,000. So net income is $592,367. And some highlights on those revenues: system development fees for water and sewer combined We're 127.44% of budget, or 391,000 collected. As of today, it's 136,000.44%, or $418,872. And as a reminder, that we are already running ahead year to date, but there was a change in the rate schedule a few months ago based on the recommendation with the report that state likes for you to do every 5 years or so that you'll see those continue to increase as well, for the purpose of percentages of collections. Water and sewer revenue was at 54.75% of budget at the end of January, or $2,307,000. And today it's 61.42%, or $2,588,175 collected. Water and sewer tap revenues were 118.12% of budget, $139,265. And as of today, it's 124.33%, $146,711. So you'll see that our water and sewer, system development fees, and building permit revenues are all tied together because of the construction that's going on in town. And then bulk water for Moore County was 43.99% of budget. That's $195,774. That's only when the county needs that, and that's usually in the late summer, fall is when they usually do a draw on that. And again, there's no change on that as well. So overall, the general fund and the water and sewer fund went $14,049,000 revenues, expenditures $10,737,000, so net income $3,312,000 as of the end of January. Any questions on those two items? Okay. For the next 2 pages, I will not go over individually. You will see that we have 8 capital project funds going on at the present time. And these numbers are shown at the end of January, and these change daily. So at that time, we were at $3,256,000 revenues, expenditures, $4,093,000. So obviously it shows a negative expenditure, but again, that does not include the $400,000 we finally received in February. And then we also will be putting some more money in the library fund for the money to be used there as well. There's been some use since the end of January. So that's a daily thing that we look at all the time on those. So overall, we're in very good shape. And now, as a reminder, with capital project funds, they go multi-year, so it's okay to show a negative number on those until you actually wrap it up and see where your revenues are coming from, or when you expect to receive them. So any questions on water fund, general fund, as well as capital project fund? That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, great report.
And thank you.
Paul, Fund 65 Sportsplex, what are we still spending money on?
Currently, I mean, we have our annual budget, which is just operation, maintenance, bills. We're paid by the tenant. We pay bills on that we have to
Okay.
budget. And then, but as I said before, really in terms of like improvements and things to do, really just the landscaping. And then, under this fund, the project ordinance fund, just landscaping. There could be some additional fence work we've talked about, but that's about it.
Okay.
That's about it, really. And some of that will be, I think, discretionary. So-
And Mayor, if you add that $400,000 to that sportsplex fund, it's between 19 and 20,000, a little below 20,000. That's a positive now. That's what the mayor was talking about earlier.
Yeah, the negative 380 you see doesn't include the 400,000 we just got.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Anyone? Thank you.
Thank you.
Closeout number 6. Got number 7, public hearings and new business. And let me see where we go with this. There's 3 of them. First one is A, zoning map amendment, ZA 2501, submitted by Old Village Enterprises LLC, requesting a change the zoning from light industrial to R10 from for 39.46 acres located east of PD Road and accessed by Parkway Drive.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, thank you for seeing us tonight. I do have 3 agenda items for you. The first 2 are somewhat intertwined. It's a request for rezoning and an annexation. The other will be on a text amendment. I hope to not talk your ears off tonight, but we'll get through it. As mentioned, this is a request by Coontz Jones Design to rezone property located off of PD Road, accessed by Parkway Drive. It's both to the, from the west and from the north. The request is that rezone that 39.46 acres from light industrial to residential 10, R10. Looking at the map, this gives you an idea of where the property is located. It's kind of that outlined in aqua. And you're going to see that little leg that goes out to PD Road going to the west. And then you see Parkway Drive to the north, kind of coming in from the site, coming into the site. The pinkish color that you see surrounding the property to the north and to the west, that's the town limits, just pointing out for your reference. And this gives you an idea of the property. It's an aerial, it's vegetated, it's treed, has not been cleared in quite a while, but there is some draws out there that we'll need to point out. Some things that could impact the light industrial zoning. This gives you an idea of just the pattern that's there. We'll get to the zoning map and amendment, or here it is actually. So property zoned LI to the north, you have more LI, that's light industrial. To the east and to the south, you have R20, that's in the green. And then looking to the west, below Parkway Drive, that's office and institutional, that blue color. And then across PD is R10 zoning. So it gives you an idea of the zoning that's out there. And then looking at the future land use map, that purple color you see is what they refer to as transitional industrial. And I'll talk a little bit more about exactly what that means here in just a couple minutes. But it is calling for that to be transitional industrial and then maintaining low density residential to the east and to the south, consistent with the R20 zoning that's out there. So it kind of gives you an idea of what's happening in that area and what's proposed in the future per the future land use map and the comprehensive land use plan. To give you an idea of uses between the 2 zoning districts, the second column, LI, is the current zoning. And so what you see in more of the green color would be allowed in the LI zoning, and what's in the pink would not be allowed in it at this point in time. And then the column to the far right is the R10. Those are uses that would be allowed in the proposed zoning. And there you primarily see single-family residential, assisted living facility, public recreation facility, religious institution, some of those items. Our understanding is that they're looking for R10 zoning for residential, but the applicant can speak more to that. We do not have a site plan at this point in time. This is just a general use rezoning.
Can I ask you to go back?
Yes.
Go back to that.
Okay.
Is there a specific one you had a question about?
I think that's a gas station.
Both petroleum stations.
Yeah, that would not be allowed in the R10, but would be allowed in the current LI.
It says,
It says yes.
Oh, does it?
Yep.
Hell,
That could be my error.
I see bulk petroleum stations as a no in LI. Is that not?
Isn't that what it says?
Says yes with an
it
asterisk.
says yes, and
Yes,
it
with
does not have an
an
asterisk.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think those were reversed.
What?
I do believe those were reversed. I'm sorry.
That could be my error.
That's a good catch. Thank you so much. Yeah, to my knowledge, bulk petroleum stations are not allowed in residential.
Well, I was trying to figure out where we're going with that.
Yes, sir.
Somebody's watching this closely, I'm glad.
Yeah, I love the eagle eyes.
My question was to go back to where you have like the aerial view of the property, that one. What is in 205 and
205 is, that's a good point, the surrounding uses. 205 is a storage lot, essentially large vehicle storage lot. The property to the south side of Parkway Drive, 150, if I understand correctly, that's a moving and storage facility. The property to the north of 205 is a engineering company out of Idaho, I believe. They do a lot of like kind of nuclear engineering and things like military contracts. And then near Parkway Drive, 354, if I understand correctly, I can't remember the name of it, but they install lights on police cars, fire trucks, things like that. And then to the south is the nursing facility.
So you're saying 205 is a
It's a store, vehicle storage area.
Storage facility, and then above that,
That's the engineering.
that's the engineering.
That's correct.
And that's where they do, what did you say?
I don't, it's, going to their website, they say that it's engineering and they do a lot of military
You're talking
projects.
about this building up here to the,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, the
it's, Premier.
Premier Technologies.
military, okay.
It's military.
Any other questions about the aerial, or Pam, do you have any?
Yeah, let me just clarify that. If you go back to that, that use comparison, that, we actually don't have a category for bulk petroleum sales, so I think what I did was I took an old table and I modified it for this, and I meant to delete that line and I didn't. So that would certainly not be allowed in an R10 district. We'd have something that would be close to that we would make that determination on in the use table.
What's your definition of bulk petroleum? Is that tanks, big tanks above ground? I'm not sure. I can read it, but I'm not sure what it means.
What she's
That's
saying
not a
is
gas.
supposed to be in
No,
there.
I understand that, but if it showed back up, what is it? Somewhere else?
Let me see if I can find it
Okay.
in our definitions. I'm
Okay.
not sure it's
That's not a
really even
that's not a
addressed.
gas station, is it?
No, it would
Okay.
be something
That's what I thought.
more at a wholesale
It's,
level.
it's like a tank farm.
More like feral gas up there
Yeah,
on five.
I would think.
Yeah,
The fence around it.
Probably.
some kind of tank farm or something like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, I'll continue looking.
Okay, thank you.
Very good observation,
Yes.
So that kind of introduces you to the project, the request of the rezoning, and the uses. So we'll talk about a little bit about the review standards and go through those. There's really two to look at. It's the consistency with adopted plans, whether and to the extent to which the proposed zoning map amendment is appropriate for the proposed location and is consistent with the purposes, goals, objectives, and policies of the town's adopted policy guidance. And then secondly, is the request for rezoning reasonable and in public interest? Is the proposed zoning map amendment reasonable in the public interest, and if not, why? So first of all, looking at the consistency with adopted plans. As mentioned, the comprehensive land plan adopted in 2019 refers to this area as a transitional industrial area. And it states that the transitional industrial has two purposes. One is to provide for a buffer between heavy industrial use and residential uses. And then secondly, to provide for light industrial uses. And this, keep in mind that the comprehensive plan was before the adoption of the new ordinance with that language changed, going to light industrial. So staff's analysis of this, the subject property does not abut heavy industrial property and therefore would not serve as a buffer since the residential properties it abuts are R20. As land for industrial uses, it should be noted that the property has approximately 50 feet of drop in topography from east to west, with the lowest areas running through near the middle of the property. In the staff's view, this would likely restrict the types and size of potential light industrial facilities that could be constructed out there. Just to give you an idea, this is an aerial looking at that property at the northeast corner of the property, kind of the top right. That's the high point. And where that little leg of Parkway Drive comes off of PD Road, that's really kind of that low spot. And you can kind of see that running through that middle to bottom middle of the site. Continuing with the reasonableness and the public interest, does Aberdeen need more land in the land use requested? The R10 zoning is classified as medium density residential per the comprehensive plan, which constitutes 14% of Aberdeen's land area with just 3.6% of the ETJ. And remember, look at the aerial that the properties to the north and west are within the limits, but this is in our ETJ. Is there other property in the town that might be more appropriate for the use? This specific location and topography of this parcel makes sense for R10 zoning in staff's view. In looking at the surrounding zoning, the proposed rezoning would serve, as we look at it, as a transitional residential development instead of transitional industrial, as described in the land use plan. Is this request in accordance with the Aberdeen Land Use Plan? Table 22 of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan lists 222.67 acres, that's 7.8% of transitional industrial in Aberdeen's ETJ. There are also 229 acres, or nearly 8% of land classified as industrial overall. So keep that in mind as it relates to the 39.46 acres that's being requested. Will the request have serious impact on traffic circulation, parking space, sewer and water services, and other utilities? Staff does not see any serious impacts anticipated, particularly in comparison to the LI district. Is there a good possibility that the request as proposed will result in lessening the enjoyment or use of the adjacent properties? Staff believes that the proposed zoning would not negatively impact the enjoyment or use of adjacent properties, again, looking at R10 compared to LI. Will the request as proposed cause serious noise, odors, light, activity, and unusual disturbances? Staff feels that the proposed uses, potential proposed uses that would be permitted by this rezoning would likely decrease the possibility of serious disturbances compared to the existing zoning. And does the request raise serious legal questions such as spot zoning, hardship, violate precedents, or need for this type of use? And again, staff's analysis is that the proposal does not represent spot zoning due to the relative size of the property, the anticipated benefits offered, and the close alignment of proposed uses with the current allowable uses, and the offering of residential types that address an established need in the community. With that, staff concludes that a recommendation in favor for the proposed rezoning for zoning map amendment ZA 2501 for the project. Again, the proposal, per staff's view, is supported by a significant number of objectives and strategies in the comprehensive land use plan as detailed earlier. And the comprehensive plan also states its future land use map does not stand alone and must be interpreted concurrently with identified strategies and actions when making these decisions. And again, for staff, it was really looking at not having that HI as a buffer, as a transitional industrial, as a buffer, looking at topography and all that. Again, we feel that the requested rezoning to the R10 really kind of fits the area more so than the future land use plan calling it for transitional industrial. I should have pointed out earlier too, when we're looking at the aerial and all, if there's any questions in terms of water and sewer, both are available in Parkway Drive right now in both legs. So just want to make you aware of that as well. During the January 16th, 2025 meeting, the Planning Board did make a unanimous recommendation for approval of the proposed zoning map amendment and for adoption of the Statement of Land Use Plan and Consistency as drafted. I do have motions prepared for you. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have related to the presentation I just made. I know that Paul of Koontz Jones Design is here to speak as well, and I also have a couple of neighbors, I believe, that have signed up to speak with you as well.
Yeah, we do have some citizens that would like to speak. Question, when it was deemed LI, any history of why it was done that way? How far back that was? Somebody thought they were gonna put industry in there or what? I mean, somehow it wound up LI, light industry.
Yeah, it's a good
Light
question. We
industrial.
can go back and look. I think it's been zoned that way for quite some time because we had that zoning category even in our pre-2020 ordinance.
I was just wondering if somebody had an idea to do something on the property and it never got done.
Could
And-
be.
And it's
right.
just been hanging all
Could
these
be.
years. And I don't know. But it was interesting that it was light industry and, there's really nothing out there. Did anybody walk that? Did y'all go out there and walk it or just look at aerial maps or topos? As far as the lay of the land?
I did, when I went out and posted the signs, I
Okay.
did walk onto the property a little bit. It was kind of during that, I can't remember if it was that Wednesday that we got sent home, or no, it would have had to have been before that. But it was one of the days that we left a little bit early. So I walked in there about 100 yards, and you can kind of get an idea of what's happening there and an idea of the vegetation that's on site.
It would, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but it would take a lot of moving earth to make it adaptable for industries, in your opinion.
In my opinion, yes. I mean, if you do look at the property for the storage, that's kind of to the northeast there, to the top. If you look at the existing zoning there, not the zoning, but the topo, you can kind of see that site. I mean, they had to do quite a bit of clearing.
One more day.
It would be, one more, sorry.
There you
Yeah, so you can tell that they had to do quite a bit of clearing out there, so it's not to say it couldn't be done, it's just whether you want to spend that much money to do it.
The reason I was bringing it up is, Moore County Economic Development is continually, that's what their job is, trying to
Mhm.
find industrial sites. And they spend a lot of their time traveling all over Moore County trying to find sites, either trying to buy them from landowners or how they can make it work to get industry in Moore County. If this property, if you're telling this, or whatever your decision is, or what your opinion is probably not viable for industry.
It doesn't seem viable for large lot, light
Okay,
industrial,
okay.
Why?
Well, the topography,
for the
Yeah.
topography and,
Just because it's not level?
correct.
It-
Yeah, I mean, it would take quite a bit of grading, engineering, clearing the site wall to wall to make all that happen. A lot of cut and fill.
yeah, just, because of the Moore County Economic Development spends a considerable amount of time looking for these properties.
Right, they do.
And then this one may not have worked out for anybody anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like I said, this is just staff's kind of visual analysis, looking at the GIS data and looking at parcels. There seems to be a lot of undeveloped parcels between Lockheed and 211 that seem to be better suited for light
Yeah,
industrial.
it levels off. You go up out on 211.
There's no train access anywhere close by this
No,
property either, is there?
No, there's no
So
way to get to it.
Major thoroughfare would be 211 if you were
Well,
shipping anything out,
yeah,
you were a
it's,
business.
I mean, I've ridden by that property forever and did not know what it looked like in there.
You make a very good point, Mayor, about the LI zoning. Generally, what we've seen when there's not a clear use, future use for a property, we've kind of painted it broad brush with an R20 zoning or some other type of residential zoning, and that didn't
Yeah.
happen in this case. Just to clarify, because of the petroleum bulk station being on that list, the UDO doesn't have a definition for it, but OSHA does. And it is engaged in the wholesale distribution of crude petroleum and petroleum products, including liquefied petroleum gas from bulk liquid storage facilities. That use would not be appropriate either in the LI or the
No.
R20. That would be more
Neither one.
appropriate for a heavy industrial district, which
Sure.
this is not.
Sure.
Thank you for pointing that out for us,
Well,
though.
thank you for looking it up. I do have, this is a public hearing, I do have 3 requests to speak. And the way I got them in order, I will call you, and if you would like to come up to the microphone. Mr. Foley?
Or did you want to let the, engineers?
Did you
Oh, I'm
finish?
sorry. No, I'm sorry. I jumped the gun. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to introduce myself.
Sure.
Paul St. Applicant shows, thank you for hearing us tonight, and thank you for considering the rezoning for this property. Again, we are looking at rezoning this from LI to R10. Our thoughts are we're looking at developing this as residential. When we looked at those land use, the use tables, we are looking at residential, single-family residential for the property. Initial plans have yielded about 75 to 80 lots, meeting the R10 zoning standards and the 15% open space and setbacks and all of those standards that are in the UDO. So we are looking at residential for this development. And I'm here to answer any additional questions anybody else has.
Questions from the board? Here's your opportunity. Public hearing. That would be curb and gutter, obviously. And you'd, how many, 85 roughly?
It's 75 to 80.
75 to 80, okay.
Which is about 50% of the maximum allowed density on the property. It's about
And-
170 if you look at the property as R10 zoning. I think maximum density is 170 units, so we're looking at about half of that.
And you know the topography,
Yes,
okay.
Single family?
single family, detached, yes.
Would it be considered affordable housing too? Because
It'd probably be market rate. I don't know the prices at this time, but probably market rate.
What about conservation development?
We're not looking at that at this time.
You're just talking about cutting all the trees and
Well, we're
putting up homes?
hopefully not cut all the trees down.
It just seems to be a common practice sometimes around Moore County. So-
That's all we're seeing in Aberdeen is
And that's,
clear
yeah, we
cutting.
just thought
Clear
I'd throw it out
cutting,
there.
Clear cutting. Yeah,
No, I understand.
all right. Any other questions for him? Thank you.
And I just want to mention, of course, the board knows this, but for the public's benefit, this approval of a subdivision on this property is a multi-step process, tonight being the first step. If the rezoning is approved, then the applicant is interested in asking for annexation, so they would have access to public utilities, water and sewer. And then we have a technical review committee that reviews the actual plans when they come in, to make sure that it meets all of the town standards, the UDO standards, the water and sewer, and the other public works standards and specifications. So that comes at a later time.
So this piece of property is not in town, it's in ETJ?
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly
Okay.
right.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Foley, you'll come up to the microphone.
Is this the last time we have a public forum to discuss it, though?
To rezone it, yes.
For the rezoning, yes, unless a decision's not made tonight, but as far as the rest, the technical review committee meetings are open to the public. There's very little discretion in the decisions at that level because we're strictly abiding by what our standards are. So it doesn't mean that we won't hear concerns from the public, and we've already heard tonight concerns about tree conservation, and yet whatever our ordinances and specifications allow is what will be done, and what they don't allow won't be done, if that makes sense.
Right. Is there any way to find out?
Ma'am,
You'll have to-
we've
you'll-
got somebody at the microphone. Mr. Foley, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. My name is John Foley. I have property adjoining the subject property, about 20 acres I moved on to about 3.5 years ago. And I really love living in your town. I'm not specifically opposed to the zoning change. I would rather have houses out there than industrial, even light industrial. But I think there are some areas where I have some concerns that I hope you'll address.
Sure.
Notwithstanding what the representative of the developer said, you have no assurances that this is going to be that the request will be residential. Nor do you have any assurances that it's going to be 75 or 80 home lots. That's what's been presented to you, but there's nothing that says that that has to happen if you make the zoning change. I would ask that you make the zoning change contingent on a presentation by the developer or the owner that residential is the intent and that 75 or 80 lots is what the intent is. Otherwise, you could get a application for 100 homes, 150 homes, the maximum, something like the maximum. You could get an application for any one of the other allowable uses. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for pointing out the bulk oil problem. That was a great eye you had. But there are a lot of other alternative uses that can be put on that land. It could be a mixed use. Your developer could come back and present maybe 50 homes plus a health facility of some kind, or a school, or something like that. So you have no assurances of what's being proposed here. And I would ask you to seek them in some manner. Either put off your decision and come back and revisit it later with assurances, or make the approval contingent on some specifics from the developer.
No, as far as the school and the daycare, they have to come after a special use permit, even if we rezone it. They still have to come back they have to come back before this board and get those approved. And as far as a plan development, that's not what they're asking for. So if they want a plan development, they'll have to come back before this board with a plat that shows what their plan development is. So right now, all they can do is whatever's a yes in that chart.
I think you make a good point. My point is, they have represented here tonight that they're going to do residential, and it would probably be in the area of 75 or 80 homes. They don't have to come back with that. And then you have to deal with whatever they tell, what they want. And if it complies with all of your laws of the city, they're already entitled to do what the law allows them to do, which is much more homes than they're representing here tonight. No No offense to the developer, but that's just the fact of the matter.
Yeah,
So,
just, I mean, again, it's a fair point, and it's a concern that a lot share, but, and I'm sure the plan director would fill us all in after this, but just so we're on the same page here, the zoning allows, as the plan director suggested, you know, residential, and there's certain uses there, and there's a density calculation that, you know, with R10, it's 10,000 square foot lots, you know, they're single family, you can kind of do the math, and that's the max density that's allowed. But we cannot, by law, put conditions on that. This board cannot do that, the staff cannot do that, and what the plan director was saying is that there is a list of uses under R10, it's there, I think,
Can you put that
Chad
up?
had it up, she can put it back. They are allowed by law to put those uses there if they want. The density that the representative for the owners have suggested is probably a calculation based on, hey, with streets and open space and lot size and all that, that's what we think it's gonna be, and it's probably gonna end up being pretty close to that, but we cannot say you can only put so many. The owner can say, well, it's our intent to do that, but it can very well change, so I don't want there to be any misunderstanding that, you know, we're trying to, or they're trying to hoodwink somebody, hey, say one thing and build a bunch more. When this rezoning, if it's approved, goes through, that is their right by law. I mean, that is North Carolina law anywhere you go. If there's a different process with a conditional zoning, which they are not asking for, then you can talk about conditions, but those have to be agreed to, you know, by the applicant, and everyone's got to agree to that. That is not what they're asking for. They're asking for an R10 rezoning of the land. Just like now, it's zoned LI. You saw that list, and it wasn't very encouraging. Right now, as we speak, the owner could develop those, and it does not come back to this board unless it's some kind of weird special use. So does that help understand where we are and what we
I
can?
understand your point, I thank you for pointing that out, but I think you make my point in what you say. And I'm not asking you not to approve the zoning change, I'm not opposed to it.
Right.
But if you approve it, you really have no idea what's gonna come back.
And that is the law in North Carolina.
Yeah.
There's no way around that without, as I said before, going through a conditional use or something else.
Well, maybe a conditional use is what's
That's not
necessary.
that's not what they've asked for.
Well, then I would ask you maybe to discuss this a little bit more with the developer. If you can't put a contingency on it, perhaps you can ask for some more assurances of what's being asked for.
When somebody's asking for a rezoning, the assurances are not binding on anybody.
So he basically can do whatever he wants.
Whatever he wants under the new zoning. And the zoning, you know, requirements, they've been worked on for years and years. Every town or county has them. Pretty standard offering. If you go to R10, you know, it's a residential in nature. There's a few extra uses, like churches and schools can be approved there, a little bit different process, because that's, you know, that's considered to be a natural complement to housing complexes. But I don't think that's the plan here, but just,
I don't think it is.
yeah, right.
But
Well, I'm just saying,
you don't
we
have-
can only do so much, and I want to be clear so you're not, get the wrong impression, but that's, our hands are tied with that with regard to rezoning.
But one thing that's not allowed is multifamily.
Pardon me?
I said, one thing that's not allowed in the R10 is multifamily. So it wouldn't be apartment buildings or anything like that. Yeah.
Right, it wouldn't be high density, it'd be
Right.
middle density, yeah. I want to just reiterate my point.
Sure.
Even though this is the way it works, you still have no assurances that that's what's going to be proposed, and if that's the way the law goes, I have to tell you, I've sat through probably 1,500 of these sorts of hearings in the past, and anything can happen
Oh, yeah,
in my history.
yeah.
Just to let you know, the land that I'm on has a house on it was built probably pre-1940, and my intent on buying it was to renovate it to as close to its original form as possible. You talk about cutting down trees, I reluctantly cut down a bunch of trees, about 4 acres in the middle of my property recently, because I want to create a meadow out there for the wildlife. We have
Sure.
a nice herd of deer that comes through there. I'm sure they're going to move if this subdivision is built.
Where exactly is your property?
Well, it's right on the border of Sandy Springs subdivision, and if this subdivision goes in, and again, I'm
Gotcha.
not opposing it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
he's
be
directly to the
sandwiched- I'm
south.
gonna be sandwiched between two subdivisions.
He's the one to the south of
Yeah, he's
the
directly
LL
to the
Matthews
south.
The what?
Yeah, the green,
The
the green
very
one directly
south.
south.
That odd shaped tract of land.
Yeah,
You see which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, it looks like a part of a rectangle with a slice on one end.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
You see it now?
Sandy Springs is just south of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to make a comment on the planning director's conclusion that this subdivision will not infringe or change the enjoyment of the neighboring properties. They're basically two neighboring properties. One is a horse farm, and one is my 20 acres, which basically forest. And I assure you, it is going to change the enjoyment of our land.
Yes, sir, and our analysis really, it was comparing it, the R10 to LI, which would probably create less enjoyment.
I agree.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for listening.
Yes,
Thank
sir,
you, sir.
thank you.
Just to follow up on some of the comments that the town manager made, which were very on point. What we've heard from the applicant is the potential for how many homes could go in based on sort of a raw division. You have so many acres. The R10 district allows for lots to be no less than 10,000 square feet, which is roughly a quarter of an acre. So just doing that raw math, you get, 170 or something like that. But that's not how it works. They are required to set aside 15% open space, and a very rough estimate that we tend to use for how much land is taken up by infrastructure, the roads, utilities, is another 15%. And that can vary. It's certainly on a property that has this much topography, it could be more than that. But when you deduct those two 50% figures, you get about 114 homes. So the raw math is really not valid. A more reasonable number would be 114. They are proposing less than that. You're absolutely right. They wouldn't be held to 75 or 80. They could build whatever the district allows them to build. We just wouldn't reasonably expect it to be much more than what they're proposing. I don't really have anything other than that to add.
Thank you.
Ms. Edgerly?
Hello.
Hi.
How are y'all this evening? So tree decimation, that was the word that the town manager used, right? That the town is going to reforest 211 and the adjacent.
The town, not the town.
DOT.
North Carolina
Okay,
Department of
yeah.
Transportation.
Because it's been deforested. Now we're talking about deforesting another property. I'm at the horse farm that backs up to this property. And I have great horses, they're fantastic, they're wonderful, but they're horses, and they're big. And there's gonna be at least 75 homes going into here, single-family homes, and we're talking about children, right? And horses are an attractive nuisance, but they were there first. I don't want children to get hurt. I don't want people on the property that's not theirs. And I realize that that's called trespassing, but when they're children, they're children. The wildlife that has moved into Domino Drive is almost overwhelming. I have a pasture coyote. He lives in the pasture because he's running out of places to live. I'm not saying that we can't put a subdivision in. We need homes for people. And I'm not sure, I understand you guys are sort of in it's one or the other. You can't mandate how many homes go in. You can't mandate where the green spaces go on those properties. The other issue I have is we've had significant numbers of fatal accidents at PD and 15501 lately. Fatal, not just the car accidents,
Sure.
fatal car accidents. And now, we're talking about putting in 75 more houses on that same road, with the average American family having 2 cars per household.
Yep.
Thank you for my time to talk.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pam, could you address setbacks on the property? As far as how close they can get to somebody else's property?
Yeah, for the lots themselves, rear setbacks would be 25 feet. However, this subdivision hasn't been designed yet. This is really, you know, good time to bring up these concerns. Obviously, the board, they can't mandate anything beyond that 25 feet. However, as we're working with the applicant, we can express some of these concerns and work with them to create some additional buffers. We can't necessarily require them to, but knowing what we've heard tonight, and the applicant also knowing that, it gives us an opportunity to at least have those discussions and explore
And that was part of it, was,
the
you know,
opportunities.
to have the opportunity to be able to say something in front of the developer, so that we have a peaceable, we're gonna be neighbors, you know?
That, the buffer is 25 feet along their property line,
Along
correct?
the rear of, just assuming that there would be, say, lots backing up to the adjacent properties, the rear setback is 25 feet. You know, the front setback would be from the street, and side would be side to side between the homes.
Put the LI back up on there.
The,
The, what's permitted.
Hey.
You could, if it were left at LI, someone could come in tomorrow and put any of those that are, say, yes in the LI on that same property. And we can't do anything about it because it's zoned that. So you could get,
One of them's a nightclub.
you could get a restaurant, bar, nightclub.
Yeah, but I
that's
think what
one.
she's saying though is 80 homes times 2 cars each times 4 or 5 in a family. There's more people there than maybe one of these activities
Well,
would have at one time.
that manufacturing minor. There's manufacturing minor, warehouse distribution. You could have tractor trailers, trucks moving in and out. I mean, you can put anything you want to on there.
right, and
Adult entertainment? Well, no, that's no. I'm
That's a
sorry.
no.
that's a no. That's a no. In the manufacturing minor, you know, certainly, because it's limited to 4,000 square feet, what we would expect to see would be multiple of those on
Yeah.
a 39-acre site, not just one.
Do you know if the Partners in Progress have ever even mentioned this property to us at any point in time? Have they even, are
Evidently
they
not.
aware of it or didn't know about it?
Evidently not, but
Yeah, I've
I
never
have,
heard it come up.
what I'm hearing tonight is not a flat piece of property.
True.
No, it's almost a 60-foot drop.
Yeah,
from the-
from the top to the bottom is
It's
what,
over
about
60-something
over
feet.
60 feet?
Well, you're gonna build houses there, so
Yeah, but
you
you
have
use
to.
the topography
but
to
you're
build
not
homes.
putting
They're
a-
smaller lots.
You're not putting a big pad to put a building on something that's
heavy.
looking like that.
With the parking that would be required as well. for-
Yeah, if you look at what can be there, there's all kind of things that can be there. You could put offices in there.
Just saying.
Your horse farm, I'm assuming that it's fenced in?
Yes, sir.
I can hear your coyote at my house sometimes.
Very cute. Not sure why we have pasture coyote, but we do.
All right, Mr. Gauthier, did I say it? Gauthier, I'm sorry. Got it, I was close.
Close enough. I answered that. I'm the owner of Horse Farm 208 Domino Drive, and I've been there 25 years now. I do not have a problem with rezoning it from light industrial to residential. You know, my concerns are the density, the setback from my fence line, because if you show the map there, the entire back piece of that property is my rear fence line. And it's fenced in from, on the east side of that property, from top to bottom. That's my fence line. Jack's property goes from Domino Drive down the other south side of it, all the way back to, I believe it runs into Sandy Springs and then into the nursing home there. So my concern is, again, the fence line with the setback, with horses being there, children. This happened almost 25 years ago, where you tried to rezone the east side of Domino Drive, and there was no guaranteed open space there. And our concern was, where are people gonna go? Because they were gonna be quarter-acre lots. There's kids who could come across and be on my property, all, with no free space. This is where they're gonna play. Again, we've got horses on the property. That back fence line is, I would love to see it stay treed. I've maintained and tried to keep everything clean on the back end of it with clearing trees and branches and everything, so it's a clean fence line. There's trees the entire length of that fence line as well. And I would like to definitely see that remain, a separation to my property.
That fence line that's running north and south on this map, that would be 25 feet into this property. So your fence would be there, but it'd be 25 feet before they could get anywhere close to your.
So there would have to be that
25 feet.
separation.
25 feet. Isn't that right? 25 feet.
There is the 25-foot setback. There's not an ordinance requirement that remains vegetated at this point in time.
No, it doesn't mean it's vegetated, but it is 25 feet.
Okay.
They can't get any closer to your line than 25 feet.
With the
structures, with the homes.
Yeah, with the homes.
The homes, but their property line will come up to my property line, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
So it could be cleared as yard
Yeah.
what we're talking about
Big-
house.
Yeah.
It has to be 25.
Yeah, the
feet
house
off that
cannot be
line.
closer than 25 feet.
The house, the rear of the house has to be 25 feet off that line. That's where my concerns are.
And Pam,
If their backyard
Well-
is butt up to my horse.
And I've not been out there to see the horse park, but I do live on a golf course, and I live in a community of 350 homes. And every day, there's kids walking on that golf course, they're riding golf carts on there, riding their bikes, walking, and they've been strictly told not to go on that golf course. So I can kind of understand what your concerns would be. The only way is to have a fence that's gonna be, unpenetratable somehow, if that's gonna be your concern about people coming over into your property.
It's horse fencing.
That's what I
mean,
think,
that's-
yes. That's what I would think, yes.
That's what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not gonna put up
So I do hear your
chain link
concerns,
fence
yeah.
or whatever to try to protect people
How many
from
acres
doing
do y'all
something.
have out there?
It's 15 acres.
15 acres of horse farm?
Jack has 20, which is the 35 surrounding that piece. And, again, I don't have an issue with changing it to a residential zoning. I do have concerns about what it's actually going to do to the value of my property, with houses built up right on the fence line, all the way down. It's probably, that back line is probably about 400 yards of fence line. And if there's gonna be houses all the way down that fence line, what's that do to the value of my property? And that's a certain concern to me. So, the wildlife, the trees, I mean, you can see what they've done with the piece just north of this new property, which is right in the corner of my property. It butts up adjacent there, and they cut it all down, leveled it out, made it into a parking spot, and Premier Technologies built a second building, and I assume because of 211, now their entrance is going to be off of that road there instead of 211, because they're taking away my easement, which comes out right at Premier Technologies, 100 feet west of the railroad track. So, there are issues going on here, but, again, it's what's it going to do to the value of my property, and people's safety, kids especially, that's a concern. But again, I'd rather have it residential than light industrial. So, I basically, if there's anything that I can do or whatnot, anyone I can speak to,
probably like to speak to Mr. Quince here, to see what, plans are, but, you know, what you guys do, you know, that, you know.
Well, it was in the indication of what's going on in the county everywhere. You pretty much can see, I mean, and look at all the homes that are already there now. Look at Parkway Meadows, look at Sandy Springs, and there's even a portion of Sandy Springs that's building out even farther back. So, I mean, you could talk to the builder, but once we rezone it, if that's what they do tonight, if we do that tonight, they pretty much can put the homes based on her specifications and a UDO code.
Now, then, you know, all I can do is voice my opinion.
Sure.
Right, and I'm
And
hearing
so
what
my
you're saying.
concern,
I feel your pain, yes.
And then it comes,
That's
you
right.
know, then you have to use your judgment and do what you have to do.
Right.
Well, Ms. Graham, there was a question brought up about that we can't control the usage or locations of the open space. There is some provisions in our UDO that does dictate how the open space is supposed to be placed. It has to be usable. There's certain things in there.
Absolutely. And it can be used for buffers, although we don't require it to be used for buffers. This is something that's sort of worked out during that design and review process that we go through with the developer. And we would certainly encourage them to increase some buffers. I mean, even beyond what's required. But that's just something that we can encourage. But Mayor Pro Tem Bowles is correct. We would look for open space to be placed wherever there are sensitive areas on the site, and steep slopes can be one of those. And it needs to be usable and not just leftover land in a corner that nobody can access. So those standards will be held to.
Can I make a comment from here?
We won't be able to hear you. You'd have to come up if this gentleman's through.
I just want to point out that when the first phase of Sandy Springs was built, open space was required between about 4 of the homes and my property line. It's totally inaccessible to the public.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? And you folks send
I do.
crews out there to mow it. in
As a
the
matter of
summertime.
fact, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we made some changes in our open space requirements because of the way that development handled the open space.
You know,
That development taught us a lesson, a hard lesson. We found out that some of these can't be trusted. Thank you. Anyone else? This is still a public hearing. The developer's here. I hope he has taken notes if this thing does pass. Yes, ma'am? Did you fill out a form?
I did not.
But you need to fill out a form for me, ma'am. They're right there on the table. Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Elizabeth Reynolds. Myself and my husband own 354 Parkway Drive. It's light industrial. What is occupying downstairs of our building is light away. They do put lights in. But we operate heavy equipment in and out of that property. My concern is I heard that there wasn't a proposed lot plan. Is that correct?
We have not seen a site plan?
I
Or
have
one
seen
hasn't been
it. It was
submitted to
ready
us?
on the 31st.
Yeah.
And there are three properties that butt up directly against. There's no buffer in between nor any other property surrounding. My concern, like the equine folk, safety. I have large equipment. I have excavators. Who's at fault when a kid gets on my property and hurts himself? What do we do then?
Because you're annexing the two.
Yes, and it's
And we have tractor trailers for deliveries and stuff.
that come in and out,
Mhm.
down that Parkway Drive. I'm not opposed
Children
to
walk in.
residential.
Who owns that road? private drive?
It is.
There's a right of way. Parkway, I believe is.
354, the second building on the
The
left.
second entrance of Parkway Drive is connected to that 38 acres, is part of it.
It was supposed to be a loop originally,
Yeah.
20 years ago.
And then it will continue that loop based on the plan that I saw that was completed on the 31st of January 2025.
Are you familiar with that road that they're talking about?
I'm double checking with Joe on that. I thought it was town maintained, but I just want to double check that before I say anything to you.
But there were 3 backyards of someone's property, 3 houses will be
There's no
on,
buffer.
there's no buffer, there's no nothing. And it is a
Yeah, there's
huge
25-foot
safety
setback, but that's
concern.
from the property line, abutted right up the property line.
So where did y'all see the site plan?
It was sent to me.
Okay.
I have
Is
it.
I didn't know if it was
there
public. I was just
a
curious.
plan that's,
I actually
made-
just emailed
made
it
it
to the
past
town
us?
manager.
We had the, I guess we had the preliminary,
We,
But I sent it to you just now. I emailed it to you, so it can be shared.
well,
Yeah, I'm not
that may
gonna
be
share.
true.
Yeah.
Nothing has been approved.
No, I know.
So if
but
there's
it
something
is
at a-
safety issue, just like with their
And we hear that, and those are the kind of things we consider when we review the plans. Believe me, these plans come to us and it generally takes months because there's a lot of back and forth about either what the standards are or what's appropriate and what we can require them to do. So anything that you've seen, anything that you've seen at this stage is not to be relied on. We have not even seen it to weigh in on it.
About the topography, this is my other concern too. The lowest part of that land does directly come behind my property. And the neighborhood across already has flood problems as well. So they're talking about putting the retention pond right behind my property. And I worry that we're gonna have another incident like Bethesda Pines where I live in that neighborhood. And I watched houses across the street from that place just be flooded. You know, that is a concern for me. And I have walked quite a bit of the property and it's not like, you know, it's not Purple Mountain Majesty, it's kind of rolling hills. There's truly, it wouldn't be that big of an ordeal to.
Flatten it.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I don't mean to minimize your concerns at all. I just want you to know that there's a lot of work to be done. The ponds are generally put in the lowest part of the site. I think you've mentioned a development that was found to be in violation of state requirements as far as erosion control, and the state has asked for some changes there, and I think we've achieved those changes. So some of that's out of our purview. They do have to get approval from the state, but you're right. I mean, if that's the lowest part of the property, that's probably where we'll see a pond, but they're designed to not flood downhill if they're following their plan. And the project you're mentioning was not following their plan, and that's why the state came in to write them up for that and require changes. You know, we understand that this involves changes, and for folks who either live or work right in the adjacency, it's gonna mean change, and that's hard. We can't guarantee that there won't be any, negative impacts from this, but I can assure you that the staff works very hard to minimize those and to require changes where we can. Bottom line is, I don't believe we're here tonight to question whether this property will ever be developed or not. We're here to talk about what is more appropriate use for the property when it is developed. But we've taken, these meetings are recorded. We'll go back and review these. When we're reviewing plans, which there seems to be a mystery plan out there that we haven't even seen, these things will come up during those review comments.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, this is still the public hearing. Is there anyone else that would like to speak before I close out the public hearing? This is the public hearing. Anyone else? All right, now we'll close out the public hearing, and we'll go to number 2, consider approval of statement of reasonableness and land development plan consistency. Is that you? Yes. Under public hearing.
Yeah, he's getting the motions, he's getting the motions ready.
Okay.
Please listen. I'm missing something. We got the two motions. We got the reasonable's right.
All right,
Reasonable's motion two, but I don't think there's any motion.
it should follow this, because that's what we,
Yeah, the motions on the screen are different than what we got in our packet.
exactly.
Okay.
The motion format that you have in your packet is what you should follow, if we can ask you to do that, and it's worded slightly different. You do have a draft statement of reasonableness and plan consistency, and that's what we're trying to incorporate into that first motion, which is whether the proposed amendment is or is not reasonable in the public interest and consistent with the plans. And if the motion and vote is that it is yes, then you're also adopting that statement that staff has drafted. You may also amend that statement. And then the second one is simply an approval or denial.
This,
Motion and vote
this
for the
is to,
project.
are we voting to do the map amendment or zoning?
This is a
It's the
zoning.
same.
This is
It's the
just
same.
rezoning the property,
Correct.
correct?
And which technically, that's
worded.
referred to as a zoning
Okay.
map
Okay,
amendment
it's
by
just not the way we
statute.
usually have had it, so.
It's, yeah, it's a little confusing, but they are one and the same.
Okay. There's, we need, if there is a motion, is that where we are? Are y'all through?
I'm sorry, he's trying to
Are
pull
we
that back. Yeah, we would ask for you to make the motion as stated in your staff report, if you would, which is slightly different, and that is, that it is both reasonable and that it is, in conformity with our land use plan.
Well, motion one, it says is or is not.
So it's worded different in our packet.
Yeah,
She's saying you,
I'm looking at this one here.
correct.
we're not using
We've got a
that one.
problem
We're not
with
looking at that
what you're looking at, and I apologize for that confusion, but
Okay, wait a minute.
it's not that this is wrong, it's that it's just not complete, because you're both
He's gonna pull up the.
making a motion that it's consistent with plans and reasonable, and then your second motion would be either to approve or deny, based on that first motion. There we go.
All right.
My apologies.
Thank
on
you,
that.
that's
Wait a minute.
much better.
Let me see this.
A lot of moving parts.
Well, that one is also is or is not, right?
Yeah, but there's more data. There's a lot more
It's a matter
there.
of
There's a
what
lot more
you're
meat
saying
to that
is or is
statement than
not.
there was in the other statement.
That's right. In a zoning map amendment or a rezoning decision, there needs to be a statement as to plan consistency and reasonableness. And so when we took this to the planning board, we drafted that statement. They recommended that it be adopted as it was drafted. And so that's what this first motion is about. Based on what you decide in that one, will probably drive what happens with the second motion.
All right, there's a motion. Everybody take a look at it.
Are we ready for a motion?
Yes, sir.
All right. I make a motion that the proposed zoning map amendment ZA 20-25-01 is reasonable and in the public interest and consistent with adopted plans of the town of Aberdeen, and the board hereby adopts a statement of reasonableness and land development plan consistency as drafted.
Motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
There is a second. Discussion with the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
So there, it was 4-1. That, okay. All right, then we go to motion number 2.
Hang on, I
Is
lost
there
it.
a motion? Number 2.
I make a motion that the Board of Commissioners approves the proposed zoning map amendment ZA-25-01.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion from the board. Now, this would approve it if it's another.
This changes the zoning map itself.
Changes the zoning, yeah. All right, motion and a second. Discussion from the board. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, thank you. So, that takes care of that one, right? Okay, that closes this out. All right, I'll close this one out and go to B. Voluntary annexation number 2501 submitted by, no, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
This is the annexation.
the annexation, this is annexation. Voluntary annexation 2501 submitted by Old Village Enterprises for 39.46 acres located east of PD Road and accessed by Parkway Drive and identified as PID 0005677. And this is a public hearing.
Yes, sir. So, your mayor, member of the board, this is the same property. This is really just the annexation request that's associated with that. So again, this is for PID 0056777. It's for the 39.46 acres that you just looked at for the rezoning. That's just outside of the city limits. Here, again, you see the parcel, you see the existing zoning and all that we had just talked about, which now will be changed to R10 for where it's showing LI in the parcel. We do have a survey of the property that we included with your packet, as long as the meets and bounds description. So in terms of procedural issues, a voluntary annexation shall be approved upon the finding that the applicant demonstrates the proposed voluntary annexation will bear the signatures of all landowners within the area to be annexed. So we do have that. The area to be annexed and can be adequately served by the same municipal services provided within the town corporate limits. Again, I think we stated to you that water and sewer is in Parkway Drive, so that can be done. The debt obligations from service to the subject lands do not exceed the anticipated revenues of the town. Staff states that does not look like they would be exceeded. And the public health, safety, and welfare of the town residents and the residents of the lands proposed for annexation will be served by the annexation, and our findings is that yes, they will. So we do have motions for you to approve the voluntary annexation, to deny the voluntary annexation, or to remand it.
All right, this is also a public hearing, correct?
Correct.
Anyone want to speak about this? It is a public hearing. And this is just about annexation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Anyone? All right, we'll go to number 2 on here. Consider approval of an ordinance extending the corporate limits of the town of Aberdeen, North Carolina for annexation number 2501.
I'll make a motion, we approve the voluntary annexation petition AN-25-01.
Wait a minute, did I close the public hearing? I'm sorry.
No.
I didn't, all right, close the public hearing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right, now I'll make the motion to approve the voluntary annexation petition AN-25-01.
There's a motion to consider approval. Is there a second?
I second.
There is a second. Discussion from the board. Anyone? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Close out 2. We'll go to C, Unified Development Ordinance Text Amendment TA 24-05 regarding freestanding signage.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, the last item I have for you tonight is the text amendment 24-05. This is a text amendment that was created by the town of Aberdeen's planning staff. So we submitted it to amend chapters 5, 8, and 10 of the UDO to simplify section 5.7 related to signage, and specifically it's really more so about freestanding signage. The reasoning for the proposed text amendment is to provide freestanding sign height consistency to the fullest extent practical along the major thoroughfares in Aberdeen. To kind of expand upon that, prior to the adoption of the 2020 UDO, sign height was regulated pretty much as business or business type signs independent of their zoning classification. And typically this allowed for a 20-foot tall sign. The current UDO, which went to effect in January of 2020, change the maximum sign height due to underlying zoning. So with a mixture of zoning classifications along the major corridors, what we have found is it leads to an inconsistency in sign heights ranging from 6 to 10 feet, and that's kind of the range of the current ordinance. And you've probably seen this image before. There's a couple of next images. It really points out to you that, you know, along our corridors, we have several different zoning categories. And that's why as you go down the road, you're starting to see that cadence of the sign heights really change. And that's really what we're trying to work on here, is to provide some consistency. So just a couple examples, looking down in this corridor where you have GC or general commercial and kind of that darker blue. You know, it depends on what, it could be 6 foot, or it could be 10 foot, it could be 50 square foot or 200 square foot. It kind of depends on ownership status, the zoning, and also some frontage. Then you look at office and institutional, and it could be 6 foot with 50 square foot of area, or it could be 10 foot height with 100 foot of area. And again, part of that depends on the frontage. So trying to administer the freestanding sign ordinance has been difficult in this regard. And in terms of, again, getting consistency along the corridor, considering most of the signs that are on the corridor today were constructed prior to the 2020 ordinance, and most of those are at 20 feet or so. So just a couple more graphics to just show you that along our corridors where we have a lot of these different zoning categories. So looking at the ordinance as written today, if you look at the far left, you're going to see the zoning district, and really kind of not the very far right, but the column next to that, the maximum height. What you'll see there, and highlighted in green for you, is we have height nowadays that go from 8 foot, 6 foot, 10 foot, 20 foot. And again, it depends on the zoning category you're in. Even if you're next door to somebody, it's a different zoning category. And then again, highlighting in green those different zoning categories on the far left. So that's really what's dictating the size of signs nowadays. So October, staff presented a text amendment to the planning board recommending reverting back to the old 20-foot freestanding sign height for business signs. There were a couple other sign types, such as the retail center and shopping center signs, that were proposed to be slightly higher at 25 foot. The business complex sign would also be at 20 foot. Along with this change, staff also recommended landscaping at the base of these freestanding signs. There were 2 different landscape square footage requirements at the time, back in October when we presented this. And I'll go into some more detail about those in just a few minutes. I'm just kind of taking you through the history of how we got here. At the October 10 Planning Board meeting, the Planning Board recommended approval of the text amendment without changes as proposed. So that was with the 20-foot height and with the 2 different classifications of landscaping at the base of the signs. What you may recall is when we were looking to schedule this to come to the Board of Commissioners, we had talked to you at a work session, and we were encouraged to kind of look at at simplifying the height and the way we were trying to address it, kind of as a hybrid between the zoning districts and the business types, and to look at making the landscape requirements more consistent. And then it was also encouraged that we look at the freestanding sign heights at our neighbors and our surrounding towns. So staff conducted window surveys, used images of the scale model to figure out how the signs in adjacent towns compared. I don't really have a lot of signs from the adjacent towns. I do apologize about that, but I do have some that from our own jurisdiction. And here we have our magnificent metal mic out there by Ty Orchid. He's right about 6'1", so from there we kind of figure out the height of that one's around 9 foot, maybe close to 10 foot. So these are somewhat approximate. And these are existing conditions. You look at Robert's Golf Shop is around 18 feet tall. Audie's is around 23 feet. And then you get to where Center Park and Bojangles is at. And the Center Park sign is probably closer to 25 foot with the Bojangles sign closer to 20 foot. So at this point, having looked at all that, what we've realized is that the current Aberdeen UDO, the requirement of 10 foot, is consistent with the surrounding towns. So with that information, we went back to the planning board in December with a revised text amendment that kept the sign height at 10 foot as the current ordinance is written. We did adjust square footage allotments based on some of the research that we had done. And then the landscape requirements for freestanding signs were made to be consistent at 50 square foot. Before, there was a 35 square foot requirement and a 50 square foot requirement, depending on the sign type. So we really simplified a lot of that. And so if you look at these tables from the UDO in 5.7, what you see on the left is what was presented in October. And again, you see the sign heights there, 6 foot, 10 foot, 20 foot, 25 foot, and kind of with the business signs up top, it really kind of depended on that 6, 10, and 20, what district you were in. Then you look at December on the far right, and you see that we've really simplified it to it's really 6 foot and 10 foot. The only exception there being sidewalk signs, which is 4 foot, and that's very typical for sidewalk signs. And again, we did adjust some of the square footage based on our research and analysis. Some went up, some went down, but again, it was really based on real world, what was happening out there, not just what was in the ordinance. I think we had expressed at one point in time that there's a section of the ordinance that says a sign height can be a maximum of 10 feet, but allows 300 square feet. So if you do the math, I mean, it's a 30-some foot sign, you know, long. So is that really what we want? So we really try to take a step back as designers and think about what are we really calling for in our corridors and what really makes a lot more sense. So in December, like I said, we presented that back to the planning board, going back to the 10 foot, basically sticking with the current ordinance, but just polishing it up a little bit. The planning board did have significant debate at their December meeting, and I'll, if you have any questions, I know Pam can elaborate on this. But they went on for quite a while, really between the 10 and 20 foot, but really seemed to be leaning toward the 20 feet. At the end of the meeting, they did end up with 2 alternatives related to sign height. One is that monument signs shall not exceed 10 feet in height. You know, monument sign being at the base is, you know, level with the ground. And then the other, and this is as December, is that signs supported by post pylons and similar measures shall not be taller than 10 feet in height with a minimum 10 foot at the bottom of the signboard to the grade. I'm sorry?
20 foot in height.
No more than 20 foot in height, and then a minimum of 10 foot at the bottom of the signboard to grade. No change was proposed to the business complex signs or the retail shopping center signs at that meeting. They were just talking about the business signs per what we've looked at in the minutes and what we recall. I'm sorry, yeah, and that was it, that no change was proposed for the business signs and all that. In January, we did go back to them one last time, and this really wasn't specifically related to the changes that we were just talking about, but there was a state statute that was approved last year, 160D-912.1, that now allows for freestanding signs to be relocated on a property. Therefore, the following changes were proposed to Section 8.5 of the UDO. This is related to specific state statutes. So at 852, under prohibited actions, we're removing 852C that say you cannot relocate the property on the premises, and we're using the language from that state statute in 855, which is a new section, that a lawfully erected on-premise advertising sign may be relocated or reconstructed within the same parcel so long as the square footage, the total advertising surface area is not increased, and the sign complies with local ordinance regulations in place at the time that the sign was erected. So if they have a sign out there that even our ordinance today is legally non-conforming, by the statute, they still are allowed to move that. That's what that statute does. So at this meeting in January, the planning board did have a clarification on the freestanding signs, and it was their intent is that the base of the signboard was to be located at exactly 10 foot above grade, not a minimum, and that the maximum 20 foot would still be a maximum, but it really allowed some flexibility that after you hit that, or your bottom of the signboard's at 10 feet, whether it's square, whether it's horizontal, where it's vertical, that's really up to the business kind of to decide based on the square footage that they're allotted. So it gives them some design flexibility, but that bottom would be 10 foot above grade. So again, looking at the proposed text amendment as it stands today, you see where the business signs, and I didn't have that part highlighted, I went below it, sorry about that. But the business signs are still at 6 feet for CB, AGR, and RM districts or R districts. All other districts, it'd be either 10 or 20 feet, bless you. And what that comes down to, that 10 and 20 foot, again, if it's a monument sign, it's maxed at 10 foot in height. But if it's going to be a sign that has poles or pylons or anything like that, that base will be at 10 foot, but can be as high as 20 foot for the overall sign. And then what I have highlighted in the green there is that business complex signs at 20 foot still and the retail shopping center signs at 25. And then, yeah, I kind of flipped those slides. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry about that. But that is that 10 and 20 comment with the number 2 footnote. Again, about the 10-foot monument sign and the base being at 10. The other changes that we're moving forward that are related to this is adding the landscaping. So we need to add a section 3A to 579A that landscaping for freestanding signs shall be in accordance with section 5518. And I'll show you that in just a second. And then again, we're, instead of going to signs by zoning districts entirely, we're really kind of classifying it by sign type. So we have the business sign, the business complex sign, the fair we talked about, the retail shopping center sign, and then the sidewalk sign. Those are the freestanding ones. As it relates to landscaping, the base of every permanent, as proposed, the base of every permanent freestanding sign shall be landscaped as followed. And essentially that's to have a 50 square foot area at the base of that, the signs, to add some landscaping. And within that 50 square foot, 50% of the vegetation would be evergreen and 50% would be perennials. And then in chapter 10, we need to add these definitions just to make sure that we're clear on the ordinance. So we've defined a business complex, retail center, and shopping center. And I will note that these are consistent with what was in the UDO in 2019. There are criteria for consideration of text amendments, and in this case, TA 2405, there's 8 of those. First of all, is it consistent with the town's adopted policy guidance? And the staff believes that the proposed changes are consistent with the town's comprehensive land use plan and other adopted policy guidance. The text amendment is not in conflict with any provisions of the UDO or the Town of Aberdeen Code of Ordinances. Staff believes that the proposed text amendments are not in conflict with any of the provisions of the UDO or Code of Ordinances. The text amendment was required by change conditions, and staff believes that the requested text amendments are required to address changing conditions related to sign regulations and new sign construction. And some of this has to do with the relocation of signs within CDOT. Again, there's a lot where we're trying to get consistency from what's existing on the ground and what the new ordinance states. And does the text amendment address a demonstrated community need? And from what we've seen from a lot of the sign relocations, trying to get people to come into conformance at the 10 foot in height, particularly when it's not new sites where they can place the sign exactly where they want to. They're having to move it into parking lots and things like that. So these signs are actually starting to get bumped into and all, and you can't see the signs because of vehicles being parked. So we believe that there definitely is a demonstrated need in the community. Does the text amendment address an unforeseen matter not present when the UDO was adopted? And staff believes that the multitude of sign relocations was not envisioned when the UDO was adopted in 2020. Is it consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning districts in the UDO, or would improve compatibility among uses and ensure efficient development within the town? Staff believes that requested changes are consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning districts and ensures consistent development practices related to the sign relocation requests. Would the text amendment result in a logical and orderly development pattern? Staff believes that the proposed changes would result in a logical and orderly development pattern that responds to surrounding context. And again, that's more in line again of trying to relocate some of these signs, keeping them at their height versus trying to restrict them to the 10 feet and then having that kind of stark change in the sign landscape, if you will. And then finally, criteria for TA 2405, it would not result in significant adverse impacts on the natural environment, water, noise, wildlife, vegetation, et cetera. Staff believes that the proposed changes would not result in significant adverse impacts on the natural environment. Staff recommends that the Board of Commissioners consider this application and make motions regarding the proposed amendments. Staff does support a positive recommendation for this request. We've been working on this for quite a while. The Planning Board has done a fantastic job of helping us simplify what we originally came up with. The Planning Board did make a recommendation for approval, or to y'all for approval, with the following items: a 10-foot maximum height for monument signs, a 20-foot maximum height for pole or pylon sign line types for the base of the signboard set at 10 feet, not just a minimum, but set at 10 feet. The square footage, meaning the area of the sign, was consistent as per December and January. The consistent landscaping of 50 square foot at the base of signs, again, because one was 35 at one point, so we've upped that to the 50.
Point of clarification on that, the 50 feet, that's for pole signs and monument signs?
That is correct.
Okay.
Base of all freestanding signs, other than the sidewalk sign, obviously. And then other changes as noted, such as addressing the state statutes and then adding definitions. I do have a couple motions for you. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. I know what I just told you, it was very brief considering the time that we've been working on this. And particularly, I hope I'm not shortchanging the effort that the planning board put in, because they really went to town on this and helped us shape this into something that we feel really good about moving forward with in terms of a freestanding sign, New Ordinance, in terms of those changes. At some point in time, we'll address some attached signs and some other things, but this has been a labor of love for about 8 or 9 months. And it's just been in the recent 3 or 4 months that the boards have had their input, and again, we've been greatly appreciative. And we bring it to you tonight and look forward to your comments and to our conversation.
One more question. The 50 square feet at the pole, at the base of a pole, I understand how that's measured. But if you got a monument sign or a multi-pole sign, sort of like what's going into the Harris Teeter Shopping Center, how do you calculate that 50 square feet? Do you take out the monument itself, or do you take out?
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't include.
You would, and Pam, you may have a different answer to this, but I would exclude the monument itself. It would be the 50 square foot around.
And then if it's a double pole sign, then you would take out the pole dimensions and stuff. Okay.
Which would be.
Just one point of clarity.
Yes,
just
sir.
on how it's being measured.
Trust me, we've had a lot of detailed questions, so we appreciate it.
But this only applies to new signs, because the old signs can go back any way
That's
they were
correct.
originally. Yeah.
That's
Well,
correct.
they can go back, as long as the surface area of the sign itself is not
True,
changed.
but they
So-
don't have to do the landscaping at the bottom.
They would have to do the
They would?
landscaping at the bottom,
Okay.
yes. So really what the statute did was just allow them to go back at the
The
height.
height only,
At the
okay,
height.
so this would apply to them, okay.
Yeah, so we would expect that. It's a very good question, and we would expect them to do the landscaping. And I just want to add, and, because I'm a little less diplomatic perhaps than Chad is, and I know that, we have our, planning board vice chair in the audience, so I just want to, we did go back to the planning board with looking at what surrounding communities do and whether 10 foot is a more appropriate height, because we were seeing that being the standard elsewhere. They were, pretty adamant that something higher was more appropriate for Aberdeen, that our conditions here are different than, say, Southern Pines, certainly Pinehurst, Taylortown, the other towns that we looked at, and we just have more density in our commercial area, and so they were quite adamant about that, and that's why we started at 20, we were thinking it was gonna come back to 10, they asked us to go back up to the 20, we're here tonight, and of course the final decision is yours as to what you find is more appropriate for Aberdeen. But they did do a great deal of heavy lifting on this and helped us, I guess, draft an ordinance that we can stand behind and that they could too. Happy to answer any questions that you have to the best of our ability. We did have a question from Mayor Pro Tem Bowles at the work session about, what if what if a sign is damaged or it has to come down? And we really see that as no different. If they are relocating or reconstructing a sign, and those are that's the exact terminology from the ordinance, they can go back to that height that the sign was prior to the relocation or reconstruction, as long as the surface area is not increased.
But I thought that was only if it was a move because of the Department of Transportation.
No,
Because when I asked you that question, I thought you said, no, they still would have to comply if it was some other reason besides being the relocation, like storm damage.
this just, so the statute doesn't say anything about, a DOT project or any other reason for that relocation or
Okay.
reconstruction. So if I, misspoke or wasn't clear enough.
Okay, that's fine.
We don't see there being a distinction
For
there.
any purpose, though, is what I'm saying. For example, the sign I brought into question across from the bank, it fell over. They could then actually put that sign back up to that same height with landscaping.
Correct,
But they have to put it with landscaping back up.
correct. And they would need to show us what the height was, provide some evidence of what the height was, but the statute goes so far as to say that the burden of proof that they're not meeting that height is on the local government. So we'd ask them to show us, but then if we dispute it, we've got to show proof as to why what they showed us wasn't accurate.
Well, that is different what we talked about at the work session, because Philip assured me that sign was gone.
I'm not sure which.
That really damaged sign that was across from the bank,
It's the smoke shop.
the
across
smoke
street.
shop sign.
I don't know.
We hope it's gone.
I don't know.
So basically, would that statute change, our ordinance only applies to new signs?
Correct.
As far as the size of the sign and all of that? Okay.
That's the way I read it, and we, unless they can't show what their height was, and we don't have a record of what their height was, and then we might have to revert back to what's in the books at the time that they make their change, but
Okay.
that's the way we read it. New signs would need to meet whatever you approve tonight, and our hands are somewhat tied on relocated or reconstructed signs for any purpose.
What is the square footage of the sign itself for the 20 and 25?
So, depending on type,
Yeah, so the retail shopping center sign at 25 foot, it's 100 square feet. The business complex sign at 20 foot, it's 50 square feet.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
and we also just, but this has gone back and forth so many times, and we've had a number of charts. We knew in the end it was gonna be this body's decision as to which way we go, so, whatever your decision is tonight, or if you choose to make your decision at a later date, we'll modify the ordinance and the table accordingly, and that will be what, we'll ask the mayor to sign.
This is still a public hearing. And I don't know if anybody wants, well, kind of down to, not many left. I do with two comments. All this is well and good until the North Carolina legislature changes it. We can do everything we can in these local communities until somebody in Raleigh gets a wild hair, as they do constantly. And this gets changed again. And the other comment is the planning board and our planning staff, do you see signs at night when you go to sleep?
I know Chad does.
Flashing neon.
Oh, Robbie.
Instead of counting sheep, you can count signs going past your vision.
I have to say that this all started as something very innocent. I came on board here, I saw these signs having to be relocated.
And I remember.
There were a lot of permits having to be issued, and I thought, and we had a lot of non-conforming signs, because the ones that were having to be relocated were not 10 feet for the most part. So I said, well, let's see if we can't simplify this, maybe reduce some of the workload on staff, and achieve some consistency. And it has really just evolved into something that's been hard for us to get our hands around, but it's also been, it's evolved in different ways. So it's been back and forth with whatever the appropriate height might be, and a lot of good discussion and arguments made both ways. I think, if we can clarify for you this evening what we're actually asking for you to vote on, what will be in the final ordinance. If you do vote tonight, then we're happy to do that. And I invite anyone who has additional thoughts on this to speak.
Anyone? All right, I'm gonna close the public hearing and go to where are we down to? Consider approval?
Mm-hmm.
All right, there's motions.
I make the motion that the amendment is consistent with the applicable plans, and the Board of Commissioners hereby adopts the statement of reasonableness and the land development plan consistency as drafted.
A second.
I second.
Motion in 2 seconds. Discussion from the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Make a motion that we approve text amendment 2405.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Discussion from the board. Anyone? All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries.
We'd like to clarify that, so we do not want to come back to you on this, that this vote that just occurred was for the 20 and 25-foot heights and the reduced surface area as you saw in the charts earlier.
Yes.
Just want to make sure that we understand.
Everybody got that?
And the landscaping.
And the landscape, yes.
Excellent. I won't bring it up again tonight.
All right.
I think you've done well.
Okay.
Team effort for sure.
All right, so I can close out C and go to number 8, other business from the board. Anybody have other business? Anybody?
I was just gonna say that, I attended the SMPO meeting on Wednesday, and one of the things that we did, I filled in for the mayor, I'm his alternate, that there have been, since 2015, 3,766 crashes in Moore County. Fatal, 14 have been fatal crashes, 14, and 22 were serious crashes. And so one of the things we had to do was come up with a goal to reduce these fatalities in the county. And the board came up with a 20% reduction per year, with a 5-year rolling average of fatalities. So every 5 years, we will reduce it by 20%.
Now, I was just gonna say, why don't you surrender your driver's license then?
Oh, my goodness.
Just kidding, man.
Well, we know there's gonna be crashes as long as there's more traffic, and there's more homes being built, and there's more people moving to Moore County. There's gonna be traffic, and there's gonna be crashes, but we're gonna do what we can to try to lower those fatalities.
There's one other, that unless anyone else on the board has one. As you know, or you may not know, the US 1 Super Street out here is in phases. It's not all at one time, what they're doing out there, so there'll be part of it under one amount of money, and then they move up to another place. There is an opportunity to modify, I guess that's the right word, part of this super street contingent with the MPO board discussing it. And that's about all I can say right now. So that would be fleshed out at the next MPO, and that's in March, right? The next meeting is March. So it will be brought up in March, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm on the board, and Ms. Beavers is the alternate, and it will be discussed concerning parts of the US 1 Super Street only in Aberdeen.
And it's an open meeting. Anyone can come and
Yeah,
share
they're
their
open, the meetings are
comments
open.
or concerns. We've shared them as citizens and also as
How
board
do
members.
you know about the meeting?
They're the third Wednesday of every month at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock at the Pinehurst Village Hall.
Third Wednesday?
That's what it's been
Yeah,
a
isn't
standard.
that right?
The third Wednesday of each
It's
month.
Pinehurst
At
Village Hall.
Pinehurst Village Hall.
It's Pinehurst Village Hall. And Miss Anna is always there.
Yeah, I know, sure she is.
Any others? Anything else? All right, that's it for me.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn. And I second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.